Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the February meeting of the Arizona Board of Regents to order. It's good to see everyone today, despite the continued virtual nature of our meetings. Suzanne, will you please confirm that we have a quorum?
Yes, Chairman, we're ready to begin.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. I'm hearing an echo, so perhaps Tom or you can fix that, but nonetheless, thank you. We're going to begin today's meeting in executive session for a performance review of Executive Director Arnold. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
I hear a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion does pass. We're going to pause now. Good afternoon to everyone, and welcome back to the meeting of the Arizona Board of Regents. We convened yesterday afternoon before we headed into executive session. It's good to see everyone today for today's public meeting. This meeting lasts until 4:45 p.m. We'll do our very best to be on time and take a recess at that point, because we have the Regents Professors recognition this afternoon at Arizona State University just following this meeting. We normally have at this stage of the meeting a public comment time where the board members hear from various individuals who come to our board meetings, sign up and present their views. Board members do not comment, but we do listen. We do hear what people have to say. Because of the virtual nature of this meeting today, which is available on our board site, we ask that individuals present their comments in writing, via email, or via a contact link on our site, which is azregents.edu/contact-us. If you have not done so, we still welcome your comments. We will review them. We will read them. We will do our best to be responsive where appropriate. But as I said, we don't respond individually to persons who do make these comments. With those introductory statements made, we're ready to go into the adoption of our consent agenda items. And we have several items for which there are recusals by various board members. So I'm going to break down the items into three separate motions. Unless anyone has any objections, we're going to deal with all of the consent agenda items. But if anyone wants to take one of those off the consent agenda, please let us know at this time. Okay, I hear none. Regent Taylor Robeson and Regent King will be recusing themselves from item 14, which is the Arizona State University Capital Development Plan pertaining to the Mesa City Center project. With the three motions then, we're going to start with the first. I move that the board approve items 11 to 13 and 15 to 19 as listed on the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
I hear a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Any opposed? I hear none. Any abstentions? I hear none. The motion passes. The second motion is a motion to approve item 14, the ASU Capital Development Plan as described in the executive summary and excluding the Mesa City Council City Center project. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
I hear a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does pass. Our final motion, and Regent Taylor Robeson and Regent King will likely recuse themselves from this motion. I move that the board approve the Mesa City Center project for inclusion in items 14, ASU Capital Development Plan as described in the executive summary. Do I have a second?
Second.
I hear a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes as well. I'm going to consult our attorneys and make sure that we did all that accurately so that the recusals were in place. Is that fair, Jenny?
Yes, Regent Penley, thank you.
Thanks very much, Jenny. We'll now move to the business of the Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee. Regent Manson is the chair of this committee, and she will introduce items 1 and 2. Regent Manson?
Thank you, Chair Penley. We have 3 items from the Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee. The first is a new program request from the University of Arizona that was approved as part of the consent agenda. And then we have 2 policies on second reading. The first policy is a revision to the Academic Strategic Programs Policy, which is being renamed the Academic Locations, Programs, and Organizational Units Policy to better reflect the policy's subject and purpose. There were some minor revisions to this policy between first and second reading, so I will ask Chad Sampson to explain those revisions.
Thank you, Regent Manson. Regents, it's good to see you. With the chair's permission, I'd like to share my screen quickly.
Of course, Chad,
Yes.
go ahead.
Thank you both. This policy came before the board in first reading in November. However, because we made some, as Regent Manson said, minor revisions, we, per process, put it on the regular agenda for the board to explain those minor revisions. To refresh the board's recollection, this policy was substantially revised. It used to be called the Academic Strategic Plan Policy. We've revised it, renamed this policy to establish a new process for board oversight and university, frankly, collaboration and consultation regarding new programs, locations both within and outside of Arizona, and novel combinations and new existing programs and locations within Arizona. The board heard quite a bit of comment on this the last couple of Academic Affairs Committee meetings, and it was again on consent agenda for first reading in November. At the November Academic Affairs Committee meeting, I had alluded to we would be making one minor revision to this policy, and that minor revision had to do with the request from the universities to allow an exception to this policy of bringing new academic programs forward or existing academic programs and new locations forward to the board for those special events where a university will contract with an independent entity, say a business to do an MBA program or a city to do an MPA program. They had asked for us to do that. We were unable to put that revision in before the first reading, and so we've done it between the first and second reading and are bringing it to you now. In addition, as Helen Baxendale from our office and Debbie Sale, we're doing what we call a process map internally to see how this would flow for the universities. We realized that while all the important provisions were there, some of them were out of order chronologically. And so we've rearranged the chronological order. None of the wording has been changed, but it should be easier for universities or anybody trying to follow this policy now to be able to follow it and know which steps they need to take when. With that, I will stop sharing my screen and stand for any questions.
So are there any questions regarding this policy from the board? Seeing none, I'm going to ask if there's a motion to approve on second reading the proposed revision to ABOR Policy 2-223, Academic Locations, Programs, and Organizational Units. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Chair Penley, we have a motion and a second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. So we will move on to the second item. This is an item for discussion and action, and it is the board's general education policy. So we're going to discuss some minor revisions to the policy, some of which occurred between the first and second readings of the policy. receive an update regarding the efforts to create assessments for the general education policy, and receive an update from our universities regarding their efforts to implement the policy provisions to the policy. Specifically, we have asked the universities to address efforts they have made to implement the provisions concerning civic education. So I will again turn it over to Chad Sampson to start us off with the policy revisions.
Thank you, Regent Manson. I again would like to share my screen quickly. We began revisions to this policy. First of all, the board has a robust general education policy. And through the efforts of Helen Baxendale, the academic teams at each of the universities who are experts and schooled in this field, we have what I consider one of the more robust general education policies in the country. This policy began revisions to clarify a few items, and just to again refresh the board's recollection. The idea was to clarify that the knowledge, skills, and intellectual habits, now renamed habits of mind, specified in the policy are not simply a menu of curriculum options that can be taken by students, but are requirements for all students as they progress throughout their course of study. In addition, we look to revise the language in the policy to provide more specific elaboration on the content that should be covered under American institutions and the civic knowledge requirements. And finally, we wanted to give a broader variety of the general education assessment team as they look at instruments on how to assess the progress being made towards the general education knowledge being acquired. Between this was again discussed in the Academic Affairs Committee meetings over the fall, and between the first reading of these revisions in November and today, we have had a couple of minor revisions. I'd like to address those to the board as per our policy. First, the minor revisions ensured that the policy content prescription is written as a statement of disciplinary scope rather than a series of learning outcomes. This is actually a very important concept, and I'll ask Lisa Folks and Helen Baxendale to clarify or to back me up to the extent that I do not make this clear. Essentially, what we are trying to do is establish the purview of where the board sits and the purview of the faculty when it comes to developing general education curriculum. The board is within its rights and responsibilities when it establishes the objectives. For example, they can sit in there in our general education policy a requirement that the Constitution and constitutional debate be studied as part of the general education curriculum. What the board is not responsible for is the outcomes of that. That is the purview of the faculty, which is how to assess and how to know that the Constitution, that students have a knowledge of and an understanding of the Constitution. Hopefully I've made that clear. Helen or Lisa, is there anything you'd add to that?
I need to agree. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you. And then finally, the third bullet there is provide clear guidance on how general education programs should endeavor to cultivate an understanding of habits of mind that define an educated individuals. This is simply some clarifying language on how that will be met and how it's the objectives of it to be taught. We started out calling these intellectual virtues. We now call them habits of mind. And at that point, we wanted to provide some clarifying language around the policy in that area. If I'm going to stop sharing my screen and stand for questions on any of the policy revisions or comments.
Are there any questions or comments from the board on the revisions that we are proposing? Okay, so seeing none, I think we now move to Helen to provide an update on the assessment issue.
Thank you, Chair Manson, and good afternoon, Regent. So Section B of the General Education Policy requires that all of our universities engage in regular assessment of general education learning outcomes. And to that end, beginning in early 2020, ABOR has been working with the general education leads of each university to devise a system-wide framework for assessing the extent to which key outcomes of general education are being met. And this work is at a relatively early stage, but it's timely at this juncture to provide the regents with an update on where things are up to. But before I go any further, I should put on record my thanks to all of the faculty and administrators at each of our universities, who are unfortunately too many to mention by name, who have been very heavily involved in this process and have been working wonderfully collaboratively to move towards a whole of system assessment framework. Next slide, please, Tom. So the general education assessment framework currently in development has three key objectives. The first of these obviously is to generate robust evidence of student learning, and to do that using direct and authentic measures of attainment. So actual examples of student work or performance rather than surveys of student experience. And also to use assessment instruments and sampling strategies that allow us to make robust inferences about the attainment of the overall student population. And where feasible, to try and make some judgments about the extent of learning growth between first year and final year students. The second objective is to foster collaboration and learning across the ABOR institutions. And the third, to generate findings that can inform improvement efforts, as well as to communicate the public value of the general education programs at our universities. Next slide, please, Tom. So the development of the assessment framework is being overseen by a tri-university group of individuals, which began meeting in early 2020. And in consultation with regents, we've identified 4 core learning outcomes or areas of knowledge initially for regular assessment on a cycle. We will attempt one of these per year. And the 4 areas initially identified are written communication, quantitative reasoning, civic knowledge, and critical thinking. And an assessment strategy for each of these core areas is being developed by specialist subgroups comprised of subject matter experts drawn from our 3 universities. And we've decided to tackle the assessment of written communication and quantitative reasoning first, as the teaching and learning of these skills has been less affected by the general education revamp underway at our universities. And written communication and quantitative reasoning subgroups have been meeting regularly in recent months, and both groups are making good progress towards the ultimate goal of having a report to ABOR for written communication by the summer of 2022 and the summer of 2023 for quantitative reasoning. Next slide, please, Tom. So here's a little more elaboration on our efforts in written communication. Since our first meetings in the summer of 2020, the group has devised a common rubric for assessing student writing, and has developed a sampling strategy that will allow us to observe differences in the writing abilities of incoming and outgoing undergraduates. And we're presently trialing the assessment rubric in the ASU writing program, for which I thank Kyle Jenner for overseeing that initial pilot. And then beginning in fall of 2021, each university will be collecting a randomized representative sample of student writing from 2 groups, the incoming first semester students who are enrolled in an introductory writing course, and outgoing late career students who are enrolled in an upper level general education or major course with a writing emphasis. And then throughout the 2021-22 academic year, we will be recruiting and training assessors from within the ranks of faculty at each university, who will use our rubric to score writing samples with steps taken to ensure inter-rater reliability across the universities. And we will, as a team, be providing a final report to the board with our findings for their consideration by next summer. Next slide, please, Tom. So the quantitative reasoning group, which began meeting last fall, is following a very similar process of development to the written communication group, though is at a slightly less advanced stage. And as general education implementation unfolds at the 3 universities, and particularly as programming in American institutions is further finalized, a civic knowledge assessment working group will be convened, as will a group for tackling the challenge of assessing critical thinking. And I will be glad to answer any questions from anyone else on the call as required.
Ellen, can you stop sharing your screen so that I can see the rest of, there we go. So I can see if anybody, does anybody have questions or comments regarding the assessments and the progress we're making to date? I'd just like to say, first of all, Karen, Regent Taylor Robeson,
I couldn't get my hand up in time. I just
find your hand.
Yeah. Helen, in one of your slides, it says that we're doing sampling strategies that permit inferences about attainment of overall student population.
Mhm.
And I know when, our revisions are designed really to make sure that our intent is clear to the universities that the requirements, the general education requirements of all students. So we're going to require these for every student, but we're only going to do kind of random samples to ensure that they meet the requirements?
This is an effort to minimize the additional impost on faculty of performing this assessment, which is additional and extra to the assessments that they'll be performing in the course of ordinary learning. So instead of applying a blanket census approach and us trying to gather data on every student, we're trying to take a less resource intensive, but still very scientifically robust approach of randomized sampling.
Okay, thank you.
And then, so to follow up on that, the first report that the board will get on assessment mechanics, it will be in the summer of 22.
Mm-hmm.
And we would then anticipate that we would implement that report and that testing for the written communication in the fall of 22.
No, the sample and evidence collection will be happening in the fall of 21. The file presented to you by summer of 2022. So you will be receiving the conclusions and the upshot of the data that's about to be gathered in the fall semester of 2021.
Okay. So the report will actually be the assessment of
Yes.
the written
Yes.
general education. Okay,
Yes.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to clarify. All right, are there any other questions? Regent Taylor Robeson? I see your hand now, Larry.
Sorry. So if we should expect it in the summer of 2022, and the data is going to be collected prior to that, obviously, does each university, will they prepare for us or provide us with a roadmap of how they're going to attain it?
I'm not sure I understand your question entirely, Regent Taylor Robeson.
Because I don't, we received a roadmap from ASU last year that really prompted our clarification. So I just wanted
General education revamp.
Yes.
Right. I think this is happening in parallel to that rather than in response to that. Hence, we're focusing on writing. The teaching and the writing has been, sort of, I think, less disrupted by the changes in the general education programming, and is something that regents have expressed interest in understanding more about, irrespective of sort of timelines of general education implementation. So
Okay.
I suspect that Provost Folks and Provost Stearns can probably answer your question on overall curriculum implementation better than I can.
Yep, and each of the universities will have a chance to address that with us in just a few minutes. Chair Penley, you have a question?
No, just a comment. I appreciate the progress that we're making. I appreciate what Chad and Helen and staff have done to move this forward. And I know that changing general education is not easy. So each of the provosts and Mark Searle and I have talked about this a number of times. I know that it takes a lot of work on your part to really make this happen. And I certainly look forward to hearing from Provost Stearns and from Provost Folks about where they're headed with this. But this has been a major endeavor. We're making progress. Sometimes it seems like it's slow, but changing general education is not a rapid thing at all. And I appreciate the effort that Helen and Chad are putting into assessment. I think we're going to see a much better assessment process from my point of view than we've seen before. So thanks to staff working with our provosts and faculty on that.
Thank you. Yes, it has been a yeoman's job. I'd like to transition now to Provost Stern, who I think is going to give us an update on where we stand with the modifications and implementation on NAU's general education program.
Thank you, Regent Manson. Do I have my slides? Excellent, thank you. You can go to the next one. So our mission for general education at NAU, which we call our liberal studies program, is to cultivate informed, responsible, productive, and self-reflective citizens. That mission remains. And our students develop a rich interdisciplinary perspective that complements the focused disciplinary capabilities developed in their major. And so for this brief summary today, we'll outline the progress that we've made toward aligning this program to the revised board policy, and also our progress toward using this program to frame or showcase the distinctiveness of Northern Arizona University. And so this slide is simply to illustrate how the education provided at NAU is designed to be a holistic combination of knowledge, concepts, skills, competencies, and intellectual habits developed through the learning opportunities provided in the comprehensive experience of the major and the liberal studies and any additional selections like minors, certificates, or electives. We don't view our general education as an add-on or a separate box to check. It is holistically incorporated. So in the next slide, briefly, to give you an idea of where the work that has gone into our initial draft of our policy, it's been completely grounded in shared governance and faculty governance. And in fall of 19, we charged a task force with addressing the input from our 2018 self-study of our liberal studies program, and then the June 19 ABOR policy. And then throughout this past academic year in fall 20, the task force has worked to develop a new program for NAU. And so just to give you an idea, in early October, the task force disseminated the proposal for campus-wide discussion. We worked with colleges, units, chairs, directors, associate deans, the Faculty Senate Executive Committee, 3 Faculty Senate curriculum committees, and then a forum representing our diversity initiatives, advisors, the student ASNAU group. They all discussed and chewed on the feedback for the proposal. And then in late October, we had a draft revised policy, and with the board policy, it had some greater specificity for us. We shared that, had additional campus conversation, and we've determined for a start that we realize with the changes and specificities of the requirement, we've got several departments that are not aligned now with the new policy that we will be working with. And we do recognize that because of that, we will have to reallocate resources in terms of teaching capacity across units to meet with what we perceive will be a change in demand and a change in offerings. Again, we're working very closely with the Faculty Senate committees. We have a proposal that we'll bring to them on February 22nd for their review. And then we plan to have 2 open forums for campus feedback on the 24th and 26th of February. And then we'll have final refinements with our Liberal Studies Committee, the Diversity Curriculum Committee, the University Undergraduate Committee. And then we anticipate bringing a final policy to the Faculty Senate for a vote in April. And now our goal that what we're working toward is to have the new general education program to be in place for entering students for fall of 2022. And then, so we will have implementation activities throughout the academic year of 21-22. And we realize that is ambitious, but I think we have a good understanding of the steps in the areas that we need to take. But we recognize that we may need a phased implementation in order to stay resource neutral. We'll need to determine whether we have sufficient courses and seats for students to teach out and finish the existing program so that we have new students entering into the new program. And we also have we're going to be adding opportunities for the American institutions requirement and the indigenous peoples requirement that we'd like to add. So we know we're going to have to shift some resources. So on the next page, I won't go into it in detail, but this is our draft program, a total of 34 to 36 credits. We maintain our foundation requirements, the English foundations, the math foundations. We've got our knowledge areas, arts, humanities, languages, science, literacy, and scientific methods, social and political worlds. And that minimum of 9 credits will include American institutions, international social systems, and social and political worlds, American institutions, or international social systems. And we also will have a diversity perspective, and students will meet the diversity perspective while fulfilling the knowledge area requirements, because we are going to embed the diversity perspectives within the content of the disciplines. And so across we have 4 diversity perspectives where students will complete 9 units, either U.S. ethnic diversity, global diversity, dimensions of difference, or indigenous peoples. And that is our new offering that we think will help illustrate NAU's uniqueness in terms of recognizing our sense of place and our commitment to indigenous communities. And again, this will be not necessarily standalone courses, but curriculum that exists across multiple disciplines. And many of that is already existing. So on the next slide, we've got our essential skills, similar to the current program. Critical thinking and information literacy will be included in every course, plus 1 additional skill. And these skills would allow students the ability to practice skills as they complete their knowledge area and diversity perspective courses, and I won't read you the list. We've got habits of mind, which is our overarching set of values to be integrated throughout all general studies requirements and the university baccalaureate requirements. So curiosity, intellectual integrity, persistence, and self-awareness. And these correspond to the ABOR attributes of intellectual integrity and curiosity, open-mindedness, pursuit of truth, and engaged civic-minded citizens. And then we will be working on multiple themes and pathways, and these will be themes connecting courses, so curated sets of courses to integrate student interests into course choices. For example, we will have, a set of courses that will speak to a student's interest in environmental sustainability or social justice, for example, or resilient communities, or Arizona or the Colorado Plateau. Again, further integrating holistically students' interests that may spread beyond a single major. And in the next slide, our intersections and transfer students. So all students, including transfer students, would need to complete 2 requirements at NAU, the junior level writing and the capstone requirement. And each major is responsible for ensuring students obtain ethical reasoning addressed through degree programs, learning outcomes, and the curriculum map. And then for transfer students, the foundation knowledge areas diversity requirements would continue to be transferred as a package for the AJEC, the IJEC, and the Cal State University General Education. And so students will continue to be able to use up to 9 units from the major prefects to fulfill their general studies requirements. And so it is, we intend to still work with our community college partners to articulate their courses to our revised program so that we can continue to ensure smooth transfer of courses for students who do not complete the full AJEC. And then in the next final page is the what we realize we still need to do. So breaking it down into the steps that we realize that we have to undertake. So first and foremost, faculty senate approval. And then we will need to plan and coordinate teaching out our existing program. we'll need to identify the courses that will be revised to align with the new program. We will provide professional faculty development opportunities so that they can revise the courses to fit the new program. We'll be, in the background, we'll be modifying and updating our PeopleSoft system to incorporate this. We will revise our undergraduate degree programs and determine how they will be impacted by the changes. We will update our advising sheets, plans and curriculum maps for all undergraduate degrees. We'll be developing the fall 22 schedule of classes. Our student enrollment begins in February 22 for the following fall. We will have our marketing schedule of classes, and we will market the new program to incoming students. We will develop communication plans for the current students who are transitioning into the new program. And then we'll be working with all the academic units to design their themes and pathways. And we provided in our materials a table of a crosswalk between the NAU proposed program and the ABOR knowledge, attributes, skills, etc. So I don't need to go into that, but I'm happy to take any questions. And I also have Vice Provost Lori Dixon, if any of your questions need to go deeply into the weeds.
Thank you, Diane. I appreciate the update. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding NAU's progress? Chair Penley?
Thank you, Chair Manson. Provost Stearns, the detail on this, of course, is perhaps the most interesting part. I recognize that what you're presenting to the board today is the highlights of where you're going. I'm curious about when you're going to present this to staff in detail so that staff can then work with the board to review this in some detail. As was indicated earlier, I think when Provost Searle and his colleagues presented the information from ASU, it really caused us to step back and say, well, maybe we need to make a modification in what we really expected here. There was nothing wrong with that. It just was a part of the process. So I guess I'm curious when we're going to see the detail discussed with Chad and Helen and others on the staff.
I guess my first response would be, when do you need it? And we'll work toward meeting that so that we could have a fall 2022 launch. I know we are, the Liberal Studies Committee is working very hard to finalize, and they're still tweaking things. But I guess that would be my first response, just to hit the timeline. But Lori, do you want to add any detail?
I would say that we could work with the board staff at any time. I mean, it might be the case that a full proposal as it sits next Thursday or this coming Thursday is going to be presented to the Faculty Senate. Well, it might likely will be refined from there. We're happy to even send that version to Chad and Helen as a way to kind of keep the conversation going. And then it won't be at the list of classes because we won't have done the census, the inventory of the classes as they transition to the new program yet, but it will have all the criteria for the different definitions of those different types of courses and categories. So if that works for the board.
I think that might be helpful, just so we don't get too far down the road without everybody being on the same page.
Yeah, happy to.
But if I may add, Bridget Manson, I would urge a discussion with the NAU folks and staff, not just a send the material, because these are complex, they're difficult. And as you've indicated, Provost Stearns, there are going to be thematic issues here. There are a number of complexities associated with this that warrant, I think, communication, oral communication, not just written communication associated with it.
No, I agree with that. And I think, but in particular, if you're presenting something to the faculty council, I would hate for us to be going in different directions during that conversation. Superintendent Hoffman?
Thank you, Regent Manson and Chairman Penley. Provost Stearns, I have more of a comment. When I was reading through the general education policy, I had expressed concern previously about is there enough in the policy to make sure that part of the gen ed curriculum is centered around diversity and our rich, diverse history here in Arizona as within the theme of civics and American history. But I think you are right on track. I think NAU is right on track with, I was really pleased. So it's been really helpful for me to see how it's being implemented. So I just wanted to applaud your efforts around having the diversity perspectives as well as adding the Indigenous peoples component. I think I'd like to see that from all of our universities. I know NAU is very close to several tribes up in the northern part of the state, but even ASU and U of A are also close by to some of our federally recognized tribes. So I look forward to hearing from the other universities and hope to see something similar. So just wanted to applaud you on including these components.
Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Taylor Robeson.
Thank you, Chair Manson. I just, for Chad and Helen, when you receive the materials from NAU, would you mind sharing it with the rest of us? Because I'm anxious to see it, and I'm anxious really to, as soon as they get it, I'm anxious to see the list of courses that will be offered to meet our requirements.
Regent Manson, Regent Taylor Robeson, we will of course do that. You know, we have every confidence we can work with Provost Stearns and Dr. Dixon to put together the list of courses and an appropriate crosswalk to make sure that this, that all of the elements that are listed out in the policies are being actually hit and developed through the Gen Ed policy, Gen Ed program revamp at NAU. And Helen's expert at that, and Lori is very good at that as well. So we will make sure that that is done. So the board not only just gets the list of courses and where it's going, but it actually gets some analysis to provide some assurance that that is being done.
Thank you.
And we can get on that right away.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have one question, Provost Stearns. The thing that caught my eye was civil discourse, which of course in this day and age is either non-existent or certainly a developed skill that we need to work on. But it does not show up. It shows up as being addressed within other courses. Is the way it's structured or the way it will be structured going to ensure that every student has an exposure and not an expertise, but certainly an ability within civil discourse in written, oral, and teamwork by the time they graduate? So they will hit all three areas. There's no way around hitting all three.
I think it will be our intent because my sense of working with the faculty and everyone in higher ed right now, we realize that if we can't demonstrate it and teach it, then the fault lies with us. So I don't know, Lori, if you want to give some examples of specific areas, but I think everyone recognizes this has to be key going forward.
I mean, my understanding is those civil discourse outcomes will be embedded in all the courses, though every course might not have the civil discourse through writing, through oral communication, and through, what was the last one? But yeah, so I think we're working on some of the details with respect to that expectation, because it's hard for it's a logistical concern that we're going to have to ensure that every student has each of those. But that's one of the implementation things that we're working on.
Okay, I would like to keep an eyeball on that one. I think it's crucial at this stage. So, and I also just want to say I appreciate you all addressing the transfer issues. While it's a relatively small group of students, I think it is going to be incumbent upon the universities to make sure that all of those things are met, because the AJEC may not change, in that regard.
I think the ATF committees are going to have their work in front of them for the next couple of years doing all those articulations.
Yep. All righty. Are there any other comments or questions for NAU? All right, seeing none. Provost Fulks, it is your turn to give us an update on U of A's general education progress.
Thank you, Regent Manson, and all the regents. I am going to hand the podium directly over to Dr. Susan Miller-Cochran, who is our Executive Director for General Education at the University of Arizona. Over to you, Susan.
Thank you, Lisa. And I wanted to first say on behalf of my colleagues at U of A, I wanted to express appreciation to the Regents for the opportunity to revisit and refresh our approach to general education. We've known that this is something we've been wanting to do, and this opportunity has really been a rewarding experience for the faculty who have participated in it. And also our appreciation to President Robbins and to Provost Folks for emphasizing this in our university strategic plan and providing the support for the revisions that we've needed. As Regent Penley mentioned earlier, changing general education is not a small task, and it takes some time and certainly some effort and resources, and we've really appreciated the support of administration in that. I'm really honored to share the progress on behalf of our faculty, and there are many faculty, I think around 75 to 100 who have been working actively in different parts of the curriculum, thinking about how to address what we want general education to look like at U of A and what we want the Wildcat general education experience to be for our students going forward. And the ABOR policy has really given us a roadmap to think about how we want to measure and align our general education experience across campus. So we could go to the next slide. I thought I would start by giving just a quick overview of what the values are that have been driving the redesign of general education at U of A. And there are several that align nicely with some of the things that have also been emphasized in the ABOR policy. First of all, we really want to make sure that we're facilitating engaged learning and perspective taking. That's something that you'll see come up in several places as I describe what we're doing in our general education curriculum, and also incorporating reflection on learning into general education. We want students to be able to actively build connections between our general education courses and their professional and academic goals, making sure that that connection is very clear to them so that they see how these courses they're taking across the curriculum benefit what they plan to do in their majors and their professions, and also in their personal lives. We want to make sure that we're increasing the relevance and transferability of students' experience at the University of Arizona, that they're able to see how what they're doing in general education is relevant to contexts outside of those courses. And one of the things that has been very important to us is we want to make sure that we're affording more autonomy to students so that they have some agency in the courses that they're choosing to take to meet requirements in general education, but also making sure that we're meeting the objectives of general education that we need to meet. So trying to strike that balance where we really are giving students significant voice in how they're meeting those requirements and what general education looks like. We could go to the next slide. So the next slide, please. There we go. All right. So I'm going to give a quick overview of what this looks like visually, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail about each of the components of what our revised curriculum looks like as we've been developing it. So we have three primary areas in the curriculum. We have entry courses and then core courses in general education, and then an exit course that our students take. The entry courses include our foundations courses, which are the same requirements that we've had before. I could talk about those in some more detail if that would be of interest to the Regents. And then we're also introducing a new one-unit course that is an introduction to the general education experience. The core courses are the primary heart of what we're doing in general education. And there are two categories of core courses that our students will take. There are courses that we're calling Exploring Perspectives, and then courses that are called Building Connections. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about what those look like as well. And then finally, the general education experience culminates in a one-unit portfolio course where students are developing an e-portfolio. They're reflecting on their learning across their general education experience and making connections to what they've done in general education with their major. We want to make sure that we're highlighting those kinds of high impact practices that really will help students be able to transfer their learning experiences in general education into other contexts. The next slide, please. One other component of the core courses, so that this is that middle column on the last slide that I showed, are attributes that we're attaching to core courses. So the Exploring Perspectives and Building Connections courses each will carry 1 to 2 attributes that enhance what students are learning and what they're doing in these courses. So the attributes represent some of the skills and knowledge areas that really cut across disciplinary areas that we want to make sure students are experiencing in more than one place in the curriculum, so that we're scaffolding and building upon their knowledge in those areas. So the 4 attributes are diversity and equity, quantitative reasoning, world cultures and societies, and writing. So these 4 attributes, again, will be attached to the core courses in Exploring Perspectives and Building Connections that students would be taking. So for example, a student might choose to take a course in Exploring Perspectives that's in the sciences, and it might carry both the quantitative reasoning and the writing attribute, depending on how the course has been designed, so that we know that there are certain things that are being emphasized in that course, so that we're able then to assess the student's experience overall. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I wanted to go into a little bit more detail about each of these components of the curriculum so you can get a little bit of a better sense of what that looks like. I mentioned the 2 new 1-unit courses that we would be adding to the curriculum, an introductory course or an entry course, and then a portfolio course, which is our exit course. The introductory course has 3 primary objectives. It's introducing students to some of the principles of general education, to some of the concepts that they'll need to understand, things like interdisciplinarity, perspective taking. It's also introducing them to how to reflect on their learning. That's something that's a really important component of what we want to do in our revision of general education. And one of the things that we do know from prior research is that learning to really reflect on your learning and engage in that metacognitive process is challenging. It's something that students often need some practice with, lots of opportunities to do. And so we'll start this in that introductory course so that then it can continue in their other core courses in the general education curriculum. And then the third component of that introductory course is that they'll start the e-portfolio that then they'll be building and contributing to throughout general education. The final course, the exit course, is where they will revisit that portfolio and all of the different artifacts that they have been collecting through the courses that they've been taking. Each general education course will require a signature assignment that helps us see what students have been able to achieve for one or more of the outcomes in that course. And this really forms the basis of how we will be conducting some of the assessment that we'll be doing of different components of the general education curriculum too. But we'll ask students to engage in some reflection on those artifacts that they've collected so that we have a sense of what their understanding is of their own learning and what kinds of connections they're building. That gives us a chance to reflect on how well the general education program that we've developed is really working, if it's accomplishing what we hope that it will accomplish. Let's go to the next slide. I mentioned the core courses earlier. I wanted to give a sense of what those 2 categories include. So in the Exploring Perspectives courses, there are 12 units or 4 3-credit courses that students would take. They have to take 1 course in each of 4 disciplinary perspective areas. And these courses are designed to introduce students to the perspectives of these different disciplines. And that's an important shift that we're making. It's kind of a tweak in some of how we're approaching general education. So it's not just about the content knowledge, that of course is still very important, but it's also about understanding what it means to see the world, to collect data, to interpret through the lens of an artist, a humanist, a natural scientist, a social scientist. So they would take 1 course in each of these areas. And then they also will take 9 units or 3 courses in the Building Connections category. These courses are designed to bring together different disciplinary perspectives, to have students engaging in comprehensive understanding, perhaps some creating, addressing grand challenges, looking at different things through the lens of different disciplinary perspectives. One of the goals of our curriculum is to help students understand that when we bring those different disciplinary perspectives, that's when we can really accomplish and solve major issues, big problems. That's where big ideas come from. So we want students to see the advantage of having different perspectives at the table as we're addressing difficult concepts. Let's go to the next slide. I wanted to give you a little bit more information about the 4 different attribute areas so you have a sense of what those include. The diversity and equity attribute looks at issues of equality, power, social justice. One of the 2 courses that students take must focus on US contexts. The other course can look at other areas. It might not be geographic, it may be other issues related to diversity and equity. Students also take 2 courses in quantitative reasoning. And the quantitative reasoning courses are designed, that attribute is designed to really challenge students to generate, analyze, and interpret quantitative information, to construct arguments with data, and to understand how to do that effectively. It builds upon what they learn in their Math Foundations courses, but is asking them to use that data and interpret that data in different contexts. The World Cultures and Societies attribute is 1 course. And in that attribute, we're asking students to explore perspectives, impact, interactions, and change within 1 or more cultures outside of the United States. That can be interpreted pretty broadly. There are a lot of potential courses students could take in that area. This, of course, could pair with the diversity and equity attribute. You might have a class that would carry both attributes at the same time, but you may also have a class that introduces students to world cultures and societies, but isn't necessarily addressing diversity and equity issues, or vice versa. That's one of the reasons that we're designing the curriculum, so that the attributes can be attached to courses where it's most appropriate, based on faculty expertise and the way that that has been designed into the course. And then finally, the 4th attribute is writing. Students will take 2 courses that carry the writing attribute. This is intended to build on the Writing Foundations courses that students take. And in these classes, students will be engaging in really meaningful writing opportunities within different disciplinary areas, so that they understand how to engage in writing, how to write in different ways for different scenarios, really using those skills and the knowledge that they've gained in their foundations courses, but applying that to different contexts. Let's go to the next slide. We wanted to give you a sense of how what we're building aligns with the revised board policy for general education. So on the left-hand side of the table, we've listed the different knowledge areas within the revised ABOR policy. And then we've listed where we are addressing those in either the foundations and core courses or in the attributes. And then also how we'll be assessing those, which starts to get at, I think, some of the question that Regent Taylor-Ribson was asking earlier. But where would we be collecting the information that then would ultimately be giving us a sense of how well students are meeting each of these areas of the ABOR policy. So we are trying to make sure that we're systematically addressing each of these ABOR knowledge areas very carefully in the curriculum, so that students are building and meeting these objectives, building skills and knowledge in each of these different areas. You'll see on the far right-hand side, kind of listed vertically, I have the GE ePortfolio assessment. And part of the reason why I have it like that is because we are using that ePortfolio as one of the ways that we're collecting signature assignments from each of these different areas. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the only way that we would be assessing those areas. And some of that still remains to be worked out, as Helen described, in what we're designing in the different assessments to meet each of these areas. One thing that I have added on that final row with American institutions is that we're considering the possibility of developing a first-year civics knowledge assessment, so that we have a sense of what our students are coming to the university with. And this is something that we might, for example, administer as an assignment in that intro, 1-credit intro course that students are taking. But it could give us a sense of what our students are coming to the university with, in what areas we might really want to focus their attention. So it would give us a better sense of our student population as a whole, but also for individual students, how we might advise them about which courses they then could take within the general education requirements to try to meet those objectives that they might still be having difficulty with. Let's go to the next slide. So I'll run through this really quickly. We just wanted to give you a sense of how one student, so in this case, Wilma Wildcat, would progress through the new general education curriculum at the University of Arizona. So if we go to the next slide, we were imagining a student who perhaps is an engineering major. So we were thinking of some of the kinds of classes that that student would take. They would, of course, take foundations classes, which we've listed over on the left-hand side. And I should mention that these classes are examples. They're not necessarily exact classes that would be offered. We're still in the very early stages of starting to work with faculty on how this new general education program will impact what courses are being offered and what classes they might want to create or redesign in general education. But you can get a sense of how a student might progress through the different exploring perspectives category, which attributes might be attached to each course then, and also what kinds of classes we're anticipating we would offer in an area like building connections. And that a student who is interested in the kinds of areas that Wilma is interested in might choose to take. Let's go to the next slide. So this table just gives a sense again of how with this particular student, this the ABOR knowledge areas are being addressed within the courses that she has taken. So which core classes has she taken that are addressing the different parts of the ABOR knowledge areas that we need to make sure that she has met the objectives in. And then let's go to the next slide. So this just gives a little bit of a better sense of how with this particular student, we would be meeting the American institutions requirement within the revised ABOR policy. So in the courses that the student is taking that help to fulfill that requirement and those objectives, you can see what kinds of assignments and which aspect of the American institutions requirement the student would be meeting. Again, this is one example, and one of the things that we have to determine as we're putting together our new general education curriculum is how we make sure that each student is meeting these objectives as they're progressing through the curriculum. So there are, in addition to these kinds of assignments and ideas that we're considering that we would be building into the curriculum, there are several other ways that we are planning to make sure that we're addressing American institutions within the curriculum. And one of the things that we are considering is how to make sure that we are addressing relevant areas of civic knowledge across the curriculum in the same way that we try to address things like writing across the curriculum, quantitative reasoning across the curriculum, oral communication, to be sure that students are experiencing and learning about American institutions in a range of parts of the curriculum, and that they're building upon that knowledge and seeing how it's relevant to what they'll be doing professionally and personally. And we could go to the last slide. So, and finally, Wilma graduates. I did want to give a sense, as any of you did, of where we're at in our timeline. I think it gives might give the regents a better sense of where we are in our development. So our intention is to launch our new Gen Ed in spring of 22. And so within the timeline right now, our Gen Ed proposal is at the level of being considered by the undergraduate council and also by the university's Committee of Administrators of Academic Affairs. So they're looking at that proposal. It's been vetted and commented on by our university-wide general education curriculum, which includes faculty from all of the colleges. What we anticipate, hopefully, is that this would be going to Faculty Senate for their consideration in early April. But we're certainly in the process of collecting still broadly much feedback and input from faculty across the university, and thinking very carefully about what the impact will be, as NAU also mentioned, on our transfer students, how we interpret this in ways that will work well as we have transfer students coming into the university. But I'll stop there. And I know both provost folks and I would be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the board? Regent Rusk?
Hey, Chair Manson. First off, I was with the general education rewrite way back as a sophomore, as Dr. Robbins mentions every once in a while. So this has come a very, very far way since I was there. So very excited to see all the changes, all of the nomenclature changes. I have a question about logistics, and maybe this might be better to take offline. But when we're looking at like the perspective of like the social scientists, humanists, etc., if you are majoring in one of those sections, how does that affect which perspectives you take? Do you double dip with your major? Logistically, how does a lot of this look? And then what is the total number of credits that you're taking?
That's a great question, Regent Rusk. And thank you very much for your input in those early conversations too. There's been a lot of work that has happened since then for sure. So one of the things that we are talking about is how to incorporate double dipping, for lack of a better term, but how to use that effectively in a way that we certainly don't want to increase students' time to degree in any way. We do have some policies in the current general education that had allowed for substitution of certain courses within Gen Ed. What we'd like to do is to have something that's a little bit more consistent across all majors. So those substitution policies were just for students in the sciences. We'd like to make sure that we have something that's consistent that works well for students across the curriculum so that they're not having to double up on courses unnecessarily, so that units aren't offering any longer courses in parallel that are for majors and non-majors, which is not generally a good use of resources on their part either. But we do want to make sure that we're considering issues of double dipping so that students can complete in a timely manner. And I think there was a second part to your question that I haven't addressed yet.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a two-part, but like the first part is like how many credits is this total?
Oh,
and
yeah.
If students are coming in with Gen Ed completions from high school, DE credits, etc., how does that fit into the different attributes that are being completed? And then how do you kind of judge where that goes to?
Yeah, no, great questions. So the Gen Ed curriculum is, as we're proposing it now, is 32 hours. The current Gen Ed that we have at U of A is 36. So this is a decrease of 4 units. The way that students in different majors right now are meeting those 36 units varies depending on the major. In terms of the units that students might come in with from high school, from AP, IB, transfer credit, that's one of the, in fact, we had a pretty big meeting about that today with a lot of our transfer partners across campus, trying to figure out how to make sure that we're mapping this logistically so it meets the needs of the range of students who bring in credits from a lot of different places. It's a little easier to map on, I'll be honest, with the Exploring Perspectives classes. Building connections really is the bigger challenge right now. We're trying to do something really different with those Building Connections classes from what we've seen at other universities, helping students to bring those disciplinary perspectives together. But there aren't a lot of examples of that. So we're trying to figure out how to make sure that that transfer process or that credit process is done seamlessly for students.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent Hoffman, and I'm going to ask us to keep moving. I'm already over my time allotment.
Thank you. We could talk about this for a while, right? So thank you, Regent Manson. My question to U of A is I heard you share about your process in engaging faculty and getting feedback, but do you specifically have some sort of, I know you mentioned having a diversity curriculum committee. Is there a group like that at U of A that you are engaging?
Thank you so much for that question. Yes, so we do have, we have a faculty member who is the curriculum coordinator for what we're developing for diversity, equity, and inclusion in this curriculum, and that's Nolan Cabrera, who's in the College of Education. And he is working with a team that is a subcommittee of our university-wide general education committee. So it's a team of faculty who are really helping in terms of consulting about issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the curriculum. We have groups and faculty coordinators like that for each of the areas that we're developing within the general education curriculum. But this was an area that was really of specific importance to us. We want to make sure that we're honoring the land grant mission of the institution, that we're thinking about the space, the location that our university is situated in, and that we're connecting in a meaningful way with the communities surrounding the institution. So that's one of the reasons that we designed that diversity requirement, so that students take at least one of those 2 classes with a focus on US contexts too. And what we're hoping is that we'll be able to encourage development of some really wonderful, robust courses that are addressing diversity issues within Arizona, surrounding the university. So that's what we're trying to work on. And Nolan has certainly been working really hard on that with our faculty too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Taylor Robeson.
Thank you, Chair Manson. And I want to thank you guys for the work you're doing. When I looked at the date, 1998, 24 years before this will be implemented. So the refresh is obviously well overdue. And so I can't even begin to understand the amount of work going into this. Question I asked for NAU, I'm asked of you and ASU. I want to see really the course list that will be offered to the students to meet these requirements. And focusing specifically on American institutions, when I've looked at the courses available at each of our universities, ASU has a long list of courses on American institutions, history, government, the Congress, the presidency, the Supreme Court. NAU likewise has a list of courses. NAU, and I may be mistaken, but I see one course currently in American national government. So I want to make sure that that we understand the list of courses that you have available to meet the objectives as outlined in the refined policy.
If I might leap in here, Regent Taylor Robson, we are not making any assumptions that existing courses will map into the new Gen Ed program that we're developing. Every course will be, I guess, reconsidered and revetted to make sure that it's meeting exactly the requirements that Dr. Miller-Cochran just laid out. So we're happy to provide lists of courses today, but that's not necessarily what will emerge as being the material that we'll be using to address the American institutions requirement that is emerging as part of the new policy, if that makes sense.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. And I just, our policy we adopted a year ago, we found was insufficient in clarity. And so this revision, I hope, will provide the universities with the clarity that we're looking for. So look forward to seeing that list.
Thank you. And I just, my comment was similar to Regent Taylor Robeson's, is that I would like to make sure that the American institutions, and in particular civil discourse, which I did not see noted in the Gen Ed for U of A, is something that we are clearly focused on and making sure that we are broadly addressing. We are not going to have ASU present today unless they're, oh, I'm sorry, Chairman Penley, I see your hand now.
Thanks. Quickly, I would just call on you, Dr. Miller-Cochran, and Provost folks to work with staff, with Chad Sampson and others, just to get to this detail. And the same request I made to NAU, I would make to the University of Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you. We are not going to have ASU present today unless people have questions about their progress, but we do anticipate that they will come back and give us an update on their general education program and its progress in May. So are there questions to be addressed to ASU at this time? Or do either of the provosts, Provost Searle or Provost Gonzalez, have comments that they would like to make?
Not at this time, Regent Manson. I think that we've taken all the the new information from the new policy. We're building on that now to incorporate that into our efforts, and we'll be working toward this so that we can ultimately implement throughout the institution over the next couple of years. So that's what we're working on.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So this is an action item, and I would like somebody to make a motion to approve on second reading the proposed revision to ABOR policy 2-210 general education. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Chair Penley, we have a motion and a second.
Thank you very much, Regent Manson. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? The motion does pass.
Thank you. This concludes the academic affairs portion of the agenda. Thank you, Chair Penley.
Thank you very much, Chair Manson, for handling that. We're going to turn immediately to the legislative update before we take a brief break. I'm going to call on Brittany Kaufman and other government affairs representatives to present various legislation that is being proposed at this point so that we can discuss appropriate positions on behalf of the Arizona Board of Regents. Brittany?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Regents. The first bill for discussion today is House Bill 2523. This bill allows a community college district board to offer an accredited 4-year baccalaureate degree. It mandates each community college that offers a baccalaureate program to meet all regional accreditation and licensure requirements. It directs a community college district board when approving a baccalaureate program to make its determination based on workforce need and student demand, financial analysis, whether the program is duplicative of programs offered by other institutions, and the ability of the community college to support the program.
Thank you very much, Brittany. Is there discussion by members of the board or our 3 presidents? Hearing none, excuse me, let me pick up my motion here. I move that the board support an amendment to HB 2523 that gives the university presidents first right of refusal. Do I have a second?
Second.
I hear a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No, I vote no. And let me just quickly explain, and maybe it's a matter of semantics, but the way the bill is presently constructed, I oppose that bill. And in all honesty, I'm not so sure that there are going to be sufficient or amendments that's going to present the bill such a way that I can support community college 4-year degrees.
Thank you very much, Regent Ridenour. My vote of yes is designed to have better policy for the state of Arizona and efficiency in the use of resources and avoid redundant expenditure of student tuition and taxpayer money. The motion does pass, but unless there are any abstentions.
Chair Penley, I'd like to abstain because ADE is remaining silent on this bill.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Hoffman. The motion does pass with 1 vote of opposition and 1 vote of abstention. Brittany, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next 2 bills, Senate Bill 1797 and House Bill 2772, are companion bills. This legislation is part of the Arizona Tribal Gaming Compact negotiation with the governor. As part of those negotiations, parties agreed to legalize fantasy sports betting. It includes both professional and collegiate college events. The professional sports teams are permitted to offer sportsbook in and immediately surrounding their facilities. The bill does require 21 as a legal age to participate. It prohibits persons with insider knowledge from participating and prohibits prop betting on collegiate events. We made a request to the governor and to the bill sponsors to prohibit betting on Arizona collegiate sports, but this bill, as it is introduced, allows it.
Thank you very much. Any comments on this bill from presidents or members of the board? President Crow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just comment that college sports are already one of the most complicated areas of university management on every dimension possible. And the addition of the complexity of trying to manage individuals around the notion of betting on our particular teams and rivalries between our own teams locally and so forth and so on is probably a road to a number of negative outcomes. In our own institution's history, we've had a point shaving scandal, NCAA sanctions as a function of that. That was prior to this betting. One could anticipate other behavioral alterations by athletes themselves, young men and women making decisions based on some kind of pressure or family pressure or what have you. And so, I just wish that as legalized gambling continues to evolve, that it can leave colleges and young student athletes and college teams out of it as much as possible. So that's my general view on this overall.
Thank you, President Crow. I think what we need here then is a motion that excludes Arizona University events from gaming. Is that correct, John and Jenny? Okay, then I move the board oppose SB 1797 and HB 2772 and seek an amendment to exclude Arizona University events from gaming. Do I have a second?
Second.
I believe I heard a second. Is that
Second.
correct?
Yep.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion does pass.
I will, Chairman Penley, I
I'm
will
sorry?
also abstain for that one. I'll abstain again.
Okay, thank you very much, Superintendent Hoffman. We've captured your abstention. So the motion passes with one abstention. Brittany?
Thank you. The next bill is House Bill 2812. This bill states a laboratory is prohibited from using or sharing a specimen or other material derived from a human body for any other purpose than the purpose for which the laboratory obtained the patient's affirmative consent. Laboratories are required to dispose of specimens and other materials derived from a human body within 3 days after a diagnostic test has been completed, unless a laboratory has obtained the patient's affirmative consent to do otherwise. We have concerns that are shared by the biomedical industry and healthcare communities in regards to compliance with federal laws, as well as the extremely short disposal time frame, which in some instances could be problematic in conducting the studies and research, as well as the disposal process.
Thank you very much, Brittany. I'd like to call on comments from the board or presidents. I'm going to first call on President Robbins.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Penley, Regents. This one doesn't make any sense to me. I just want to amplify what President Crow said about the last one. I was going to chime in on that, but I completely agree with his position on betting on sports, collegiate sports in general, and specifically in Arizona. But with regard to this bill, this makes no sense to me at all. Biobanks are set up specifically to store specimen because there's knowledge that can be attained and discovered that could be beneficial to human health in a variety of different ways, including cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, cardiovascular diseases. So while I understand the issue around privacy and protection of data, there are mechanisms that one could use through IRB processes that would be beneficial to humankind and the discovery of new knowledge. So I would hope that we as a community, and specifically you as regents, would vigorously oppose this bill.
Thank you very much, President Robbins. Any other comment before I present a motion? Regent Taylor Robson.
I just have a question, and I don't know who can answer it. Maybe it's Dr. Robbins, but this seems highly unusual. Is there legislation in other states similar to this, or would this be an outlier?
I think, Chairman Penley, Regent Taylor Robeson, I think that this would be highly unusual. Now, there are certainly provisions that protect against for instance, profit making from human specimens by an institution. But this one is really unusual, at least in my experience.
Thank you very much for raising that issue, Regent Taylor Robeson, and thanks for your response, President Robbins. I move the board oppose HB 2812. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Thank you, Superintendent Hoffman. I tried to move more slowly this time.
Thank you.
With one abstention, the motion does pass. Brittany, will you please continue?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next bill is Senate Bill 1648. This bill states a person cannot be required to take or receive or disclose whether the person has taken or received a COVID-19 vaccine as a condition of employment, entry into any business or public space, or receipt of any service or good. It states discrimination for refusing to take or receive a COVID-19 vaccine is prohibited.
Thank you very much, Brittany. Do one of our presidents care to address this issue?
I think that vaccine, Regent Penley, I think that the universities have always looked at the primacy of health and safety for students who are living in close proximity of each other. And like other vaccines at the appropriate time, we need to consider whether or not the COVID vaccine is something we want to require for participation and enrollment in our programs. And this bill potentially could preclude the authority of the board to add the COVID vaccine to our portfolio of other vaccines that we require.
Thank you, President Chang. Just to clarify for the public, we have no immediate intention to require a vaccine of this for our students, faculty, or other employees. However, things may change, as President Chang has noted, and we have generally adopted a policy that we need discretion as a board to really make these sorts of decisions in the best interests of our students and our employees and for the benefit of these universities. Therefore, I move that we oppose SB 1648. Do I have a second?
Second.
I hear a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain, just to be consistent that we're staying silent on it for ADE.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Hoffman. With your noted abstention, the motion does pass. Brittany?
Mr. Chairman, this is Regent Taylor Robeson. I'm abstaining as well. I have not had a chance to read the bill, and part of Brittany's briefing was cut out. So till I read it, I don't want to weigh in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Regent Taylor Robeson. Your abstention is noted as well. So the motion passes with 2 abstentions. Brittany?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I do cut out, please someone else chime in. I apologize for that. The last bill for discussion today is Senate Bill 1457. This bill prohibits a facility that is run by or that operates on the property of a public institution, including an ABOR institution, or a person who is employed by a public institution acting within the scope of an employment from performing an abortion, unless the abortion is necessary to save the life of a woman, counseling in favor of abortion, providing a referral for an abortion. State law already prohibits abortions from being performed at any facility under the jurisdiction of ABOR, unless it's necessary to save the life of a woman having the abortion. This bill language is more expansive than the current prohibition. It also proposes to restrict counseling in favor of abortion or providing a referral for an abortion, and prohibits employees of the university from doing so, with no exception for counseling or referral for circumstances where the life of the woman potentially having the abortion is in danger. We're not certain regarding what counseling or referral services may be offered through student health services or by physicians who are employed by the university. This restriction on counseling and referrals might also raise free speech and academic freedom issues and disputes. The bill also prohibits entering into any contract or commercial transaction with an abortion provider or an affiliate of an abortion provider. It is unclear what abortion provider or affiliate means or includes. No state or federal funds handled by the state, including university funds, can be expended, allocated for, or granted for research involving abortion or human somatic cell nuclear transfer. The language around research is very broad and could impact university research.
Thank you very much, Brittany. Is there a comment from our presidents or board members on this bill? President Crow.
I really have, I don't know the author's intention or what have you, Brittany, but it seems to me that the legislative regulation of the act of counseling, which is a private medical transaction between an individual licensed to practice counseling as a profession and the patient of that profession, I don't see how the government can tell the counselor what to say. I just don't see how that's even possible, number one. And number two, there is a very significant number of far-reaching implications of this because of the addition not only of the conduct and the practice of giving medical abortions, but also the scientific clause that you brought up that you just also happened to mention. So there is a broad breadth of biological science going on at all of the universities, and that's a very broad statement. And so I guess what I would raise is I don't understand the I'm guessing, but I don't really fully understand the intent. So the intent is to control the act of counseling and to define the act of science, which is different than the act of medicine. And so it seems to me that this is a very, very far-reaching piece of proposed legislation.
Thank you very much, President Crow. President Robbins.
Yeah, Chairman Penley, I would agree with President Crow, but Brittany mentioned something about nuclear transfer. I think that's something that is certainly beneficial to science and particularly in the field of regenerative medicine. So I just on that basis alone, I would encourage you to oppose this.
Any other comments? Regent Schupman, followed by Regent Taylor Robeson.
The other troubling aspect of this bill is prohibiting our ability to interact with any agency or provider of abortions, which could affect our relationships with hospitals and other systems. So I think this is a very troubling bill, and I would certainly vote to oppose it.
Regent Taylor Robeson.
Yeah, I was going to raise the same issue. It may put us in jeopardy of existing contracts that we have. But Brittany, you said, and it was my understanding, state law already prohibits providing abortions on state-owned property. Is that correct?
Correct. But this actually broadens that definition.
Thank you.
And prohibition.
Brittany, I guess I need a clarification from you on whether the language can be clarified or amendments can be provided that would make this bill acceptable, and whether we should move in the direction of amending or clarification or just outright opposing the bill. I need some help from you and advice to the board.
Mr. Chairman, I would actually look to the presidents or my counterparts for their thoughts on if this is fixable, solvable, these problems, or if this bill just is problematic all around and this needs to be opposed.
Comments from any other government affairs representatives or from the three presidents?
Chairman Penley, I think Sabrina has her hand up, but I think there's so many reasons to oppose this bill, but I would yield my time to Sabrina.
Sabrina, why don't you go ahead?
President Robbins, yeah, I mean, I've had several meetings with individuals from our health sciences, both on the research side and also on the medical education side. It would need substantial amendments in order to make it, I think, okay. And I think it would take a lot of work. I also know that there are other healthcare entities that have concerns as well. And so how, and are moving to try to communicate those concerns to the sponsor to hopefully stop the legislation. So that always, someone amending the bill usually impacts another entity's ability to stop it. And so that is at play, but we would need significant changes in order to make it okay, both on the medical education and the research side.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. Then here is the motion I would propose to the board. I move the board oppose SB 1457 unless significant clarification can be provided to it that would be acceptable to the complex set of relationships that we have with other entities, as well as with regard to education. Is there a second? Regent Rusk.
Clarification, if I oppose the bill outright, regardless of any amendment, would I vote nay here?
If you oppose the bill, what I'm proposing that we oppose the bill unless significant clarification can be made, make this bill acceptable, which means we would have to come back as a board and support it subsequently if we were going to support it. But at this point, we are opposing it without that clarification.
Okay, thank you.
In other words, I move that we oppose SB 1457 unless significant clarification can be provided by its sponsors or through amendments to make it acceptable to the board. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
I hear how many nays? 2 nays?
3.
And abstentions? 3 nays? Hold it, let me just count. Nays. I have 3 nays. Is there an abstention?
Yes, Chairman Penley, I abstain.
I believe, Jenny, that the motion passes.
I believe it does. I'm counting. It looks like 4 in favor, 3 opposed, well, and 1 abstention. Am I counting that correctly?
And I vote for the opposition without clarification.
So Regent Penley, you're a yay on the motion.
Yes, I am.
So I think that's 5 yays.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, the motion passes. Brittany, any other issues that you want to raise with us?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes everything for today.
Okay, thanks very much, everyone. We're going to take a 20-minute break here. We'll reconvene at 3:30 p.m. to address some issues for the Finance, Capital, and Resources Committee, unless there's an issue John wants to raise before we take a 20-minute recess. John, anything?
No, sir. I think we could use the recess.
I do as well.
Something.
Okay, we're in recess, folks, for 20 minutes. Suzanne, do we have a quorum of the board back with us?
Yes, Chair Bentley, we do have a quorum back on video.
Okay, thanks very much, folks. We are back in session. I know we moved through that last vote rather rapidly with regard to SB 1457, and some of the regents may well wish to comment on that. Are there any regents who wish to comment? Regent Duvall.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify. So first, I appreciate what you were attempting to do. There are serious concerns about this bill. And I recognize that your thought, which I think reflects the view of what we heard from our presidents and others, is that we want to try and fix it. My no vote, I want to be clear, was because I think it's unfixable and think that we may be running unnecessary risk implying to advocates of the bill that we are a negotiating party and could get to a satisfactory place. Others may have a different point of view, but mine is that we can't, and therefore my vote was in that context. Didn't want it to be implied as supporting the bill, which is not the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Duvall. Regent Rusk.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Penley. My thought process follows exactly that of Regent Duvall, and since I can't say it much better than him, my sentiments are exactly echoed by Regent Duvall.
Thank you, Regent Rusk. Any other comments from members of the board? If not, we're going to turn now to the Finance, Capital, and Resources Committee. Regent Taylor Robeson is the chair of that committee, and she'll introduce the items associated with it. Regent Taylor Robeson.
Thank you, Chairman Penley. The Finance, Capital, and Resources Committee agenda includes items 4 through 7 for action and items 12 through 17, which were approved on the consent agenda earlier. So for item number 4, Arizona State University asked the board to approve an extension of a multiple-year employment contract for Tracy Smith as the head baseball coach, and President Crow will present this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Crow, I apologize. May I make a comment before you get underway?
Yes, sir.
I apologize. Thank you. Today, we're going to consider, board members, a whole set of issues associated with contracts for coaches. And I just want to make a general comment about all of these issues. Athletics is an important part of what a university does. Student athletes are an important part of our student body. This board has really made an effort to not only work with our 3 presidents to find coaches who were able to win, but coaches who had a commitment to students and to student success from an academic point of view. Coaches really require a lot of skills. They operate and manage entire operations. They also are responsible for the academic success and obviously the athletic success of the student athletes. This board has focused on being diligent stewards of our responsibility associated with these contracts. We've made substantial changes to the way our presidents present these contracts and to the way that we monitor those. The universities must be set up to compete effectively, but they must be set up to compete in a way that is consistent with the approach this board has taken to financial oversight, as well as to academic success. The individual that President Crow is going to address is Tracy Smith, the head baseball coach at ASU. He has a long history of winning, just as the ASU women's basketball coach, Charlie Turner, does as well. The winningest coach in Arizona's history in this area, ASU's history, I should say, and certainly one of the top ones in the Pac-12. Head football coach, Jed Fish, the new coach at the University of Arizona, is an individual who brings an enormous amount of talent, not only from colleges and universities, but also from the NFL. And finally, we have Ray Anderson's contract on the table. Ray has hired 17 of 22 current coaches. He has 14 ASU athletes in his history who've earned national championships. He's improved the academic success. These contract extensions are all an important part of maintaining not only the athletic continuity, but also the academic success of our universities. And with my apologies to you, President Crow, for that introduction, let me go back to you. And thank you very much, Chair Taylor Robeson, for letting me interrupt.
Thank you, Regent Penley and Chair Taylor Robeson. I thought I would make just a brief introductory comment prior to Coach Smith's extension, and that is, I did answer from a couple of regents, a few regents, in fact, some concerns or questions about an article that appeared in the Arizona Republic today by reporter Craig Harris. And Craig's generally a pretty good reporter, but I want to clarify for regents, just in the context of these three items that we have coming forward, that Craig's analysis of what's going on at ASU seems to be off. He seems to have missed what year he's thinking about. The opening sentence of his study of his article says that Arizona State University's athletic department lost $11 million last year because of COVID-19, but employees went on to get bonuses and so forth and so on. Last year means FY 2020, when our actual losses were $4.5 million, almost none of which were related to COVID, because COVID occurred after our major money generating sports had actually completed their seasons. So our fiscal year, just to remind regents, goes from July 1 to June 30. The impact of COVID wasn't really materially impacting our athletic programs until March and April of 2020. So there was almost no impact whatsoever. So just on the opening highlighting sentence or paragraph from Mr. Harris is wrong. And then secondly, and let me just add, and I'll just say this again because I know this created some confusion. Somehow the notion was that we're giving bonuses in the middle of a pandemic to people. We're not giving bonuses to our athletic staff in the middle of the pandemic. We gave discretionary bonuses and contractual bonuses to people for FY 2020. The bulk of the pandemic's impact is in FY 21. So Mr. Harris didn't know what year he was looking at in terms of the bonus and the bonus assignments. And so we're hoping to be able to correct him and get this thing on track, because the big question is, in fact, what are our losses in FY 21? And we don't know the answer to that yet, other than they are substantial, as we've talked about with regents before on several occasions, in the tens of millions of dollars. But the article that you all read, or some of you read, wasn't about any of that. It was about somehow thinking that that's what this was about, when it in fact wasn't the case. So I apologize, Madam Chair, for doing that little digression. It just sort of got me worked up a little bit to read the first paragraph of that article, for that article then to not actually be portraying what actually is going on, because it was off by a year, and then to suggest that somehow we're giving out bonuses and all kinds of other things. It is also the case, and I'll just remind the regents of this prior to any of these contract matters related to athletics. ASU has laid off no one, reduced no salaries, and had no furloughs related to COVID, period. And so other athletic departments or other programs around the country or what have you may have been doing this, and they may have done this, and they may have done this in anticipation of certain things and so forth and so on. We didn't. And I've also spent time with regents, both individually and as a group, talking about our particular strategy and how we're advancing the institution to be able to weather the storm as best as we can. So I just found Mr. Harris's article, I think he just, I don't know for sure, but I think he got the year wrong. And so he was just off. An article about FY 21, FY 22, FY 23. Now that will be interesting, because that will be about COVID losses and how we're managing COVID losses, which we have not worked our way through. So, Madam Chair, then turning to our baseball coach, and I appreciated the comments from Chairman Penley. Tracy, we're extending his contract for 2 years under the same term. It's been a rough trajectory for us the last few years in baseball, rebuilding the team after firing the #1 coach in college baseball at the time. We were ranked #1 when we made that change, and we're looking to capitalize on substantial recruitment activity that Coach Smith has been able to put on the table, and so we're looking to extend his contract for 2 years, same terms.
Thank you, Dr. Crow. Is there any questions or comments on Tracy Smith's contract? Okay, hearing none, I move that the board approve the Arizona State University request for an extension of a multiple-year employment contract for Tracy Smith as head baseball coach, as described in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Chairman, we have a motion and a second. If you'd like to call for the vote.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Back to you, Regent Taylor Robeson.
Thank you. Item number 5. For item number 5, Arizona State University asked the board to approve an extension of a multiple-year employment contract for Charlie Turner Thorne as head women's basketball coach. President Crow will present this item.
Thank you, Regent. So Charlie Turner Thorne has already been stated as one of the most successful coaches in the United States, the most successful coach in the history of Arizona State University. She's successfully leading our women repeatedly to national championship tournament opportunities. She graduates all of her athletes. She is a stellar example of what we want our coaches to be in every possible way, and we're looking to extend her contract for 2 years under the present terms, and we're also ever hopeful. It is true, as all regents know, our teams are playing in the middle of COVID. We are advancing under very, very complex operational rules and guidelines, and our women are out there playing and playing hard, and we'd like to keep Coach Turner Thorne moving forward with our women into more and more opportunities to win a national championship.
Thank you for that. Any questions or comments on this item? I don't see any hands raised, so I will move that the board approve the Arizona State University request for an extension of a multiple-year employment contract for Charlie Turner Thorne as head women's basketball coach, as described in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Chairman, it's been moved and seconded. If you'd like to call for a vote.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 6. For item number 6, Arizona State University asked the board to approve an extension of a multiple-year employment contract for Raymond Anderson as Vice President of University Athletics. Dr. Crow.
Thank you, Regent Taylor Robeson. This is a retention proposal. It is a 5-year retention, a new contract. It's an extension, but a new contract for 5 years for Ray Anderson. Ray has been extremely successful as our vice president for University Athletics. We hired Ray in 2014 from his role as one of the senior executives at the National Football League, and convinced him to change his focus from the business of sports to the building of young people through sports. He's been very successful at that, as has already been stated, hiring the vast majority of our coaches, producing the highest academic outcomes in the history of our institution, including the retention rates of our freshman athletes, which now are at 90%, very, very high graduation rates. We're the number 2 academic performer in the Pac-12 with very high performance in our sports, and still continuing to evolve and still moving forward. Ray is a very popular candidate for very high profile positions with very substantial compensation packages well beyond anything that we can even come close to addressing. So I wanted to put a lock-in contract for Ray where he would agree to stay, not to hang up the phone on everybody else that's calling him. I won't walk through all these places, but fantastic institutional opportunities. Ray is committed to our mission, so we've constructed a package for him that allows him to have a substantial retention bonus for each year of additional service with us, as well as some increase in his base salary, as well as a deeper commitment overall to all the things that we're trying to do coming from Ray. And so we're excited about this. I will say that I share some of your views that the market for athletic directors and the market for football coaches and basketball coaches continues to accelerate. We're not at the top of that market. The athletic director of Northwestern University, who just transferred to the Atlantic Coast Conference as as commissioner of that conference, his compensation his base compensation was well above last year anything that we're even proposing for Ray. And I'm just picking on him as an example. There's many, many others. So we're not trying to play at the top of the market. We're trying to keep a person that I believe is one of the consummate professionals in the United States as a leader of university athletics. Ray Anderson, the people that he's hired, the coaches that he's brought here, the programs that we've turned around, the programs that we've advanced, the enhancement in the culture of our athletic programs, the diversity of our athletic programs, all these things together. So this is a 5-year renewal of his contract, and is what I can say is it's not possible for us, nor do we even try to match these other offers. So don't think that. This is about a third of his market value. How do I know his market value? I know what people are willing to offer him because they spoke to me. Not Ray speaking to me, them speaking to me. And so I believe it's actually 31% of his market value. And so it's a substantial increase nonetheless, coming at a time in the middle of COVID and so forth and so on. But this is a lock-in retention for him. We have been retaining faculty. We have been retaining executives within the institution because we cannot lose our talent in the middle of all this, and other institutions are continuing to recruit. So, Madam Chair, that's my presentation for Vice President Ray Anderson.
Thank you, Dr. Crow. And I want to camp on some of the things that Chair Penley talked about and follow up on your comments as well. It's no surprise to anybody that we're living in an extremely competitive environment in college athletics. And I know we are not paying top of the market. And I do know that Ray Anderson has been recruited away, or they've attempted to recruit him away. So given the things that he has done, particular on the academic side, and I think it's important to point out to the public that a couple of years ago, we made a conscious decision to reward our athletic staff for improvements in academic performance, and Ray Anderson has done that. So I think that's very important to point out. And I also, the public probably doesn't fully appreciate or understand Ray Anderson's commitment to the university in the sharing of his time, talent, and resources on any number of things, not the least of which was the reestablishment of the men's tennis program. And Dr. Crow, you could probably add to a lengthy list of other things that he has done that many people don't see. With all that being said, I would like to understand the world of athletics, and the finances sometimes are, I think we need to be a little more transparent about. And in our briefing materials, we have listed the bonuses that were paid, performance bonuses paid in accordance with our contract. But what wasn't listed, and what I would like to understand better, is the discretionary bonuses that were raised in Craig Harris's article. Can you speak to that?
Well, I think I'm allowed to give a discretionary bonus up to a certain amount, and then Ray has not always taken that bonus, and then or all of it. And so he has, I don't know what the legal term is, maybe Jose can help me, but he constructively refuses a bonus that's being offered, and then we put that back into the pool for other employees. And so I don't have a lot of discretion in his bonuses. Most of his bonus is a function of the formulaic structure that we've put in place. So there's a small amount where there's some discretion. Jose, you want to add anything to that or take away from that?
That's right. I think the legal phrase is declaim.
Declaim, yeah.
Is bonus, and the part you're talking about is 100,000 max is the discretionary bonus you have the authority to present to Ray.
Right. So Madam Chair, most of the structure of his financial construct is derivative of performance, all but that one small item. And that was left as just another tool for me to, as the chief executive, to get maximum performance from the officer.
Okay. So that $100,000 max discretionary compensation is something in his contract? Is that spelled out in the contract?
It has been in his contract. Jose, you want to mention?
Yes,
where...
there are three kinds of performances or bonuses: the academic performance, sports team performance, and what's called the SDA bonus, and that's the 100,000 for the department.
Okay, and then just to be clear, this $100,000 that was referenced in the article, he did disclaim. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know how much of Mr. Harris's article is deadly accurate. The first sentence is inaccurate, so therefore it's impossible to know the rest of it is being accurate or not. But I think that's what the article is referring to. I found other material errors in the article, and so we have to go back and check because I don't know exactly what he was saying. He seemed to be off. I think the mistake that Craig made was he was off by a year, and so that's my understanding. Yes.
Okay. Well, I would say just on my knowledge of Ray Anderson's generosity to the university in giving back, it would not be inconsistent at all for him to have returned that bonus or divvied it up to other
Well,
employees.
just to be clear, Madam Chair, so Ray is one of our most significant donors to the athletic program. He's a significant donor to the building of the stadium, $500,000 himself. He is generous in he and his wife. Buffy are generous to a very significant degree across the athletic realm of the institution.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, I move that the board approve the
Regent Duvall has his hand up.
Oh, who?
Sure.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm failing to get my blue hand up, so you've got the normal one.
Okay, Regent Duvall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. Just, I want to speak to this for just a minute as well. I realize we are operating in a competitive environment, but the escalation of costs of college athletics there's a degree of insanity about it. And, I just want to recognize that, this just has the potential of driving all of us off the cliff. And I'm not sure why, I can't articulate an exit strategy, but there is an insanity about it that just I find very, very troubling. And I know we won't fix it with these contracts. And I recognize and I believe that these contracts all do represent the value of the people we are hiring in the competitive environment in which they exist. So recognize all of that. But I do appreciate the commitments and the conversations that we've begun to have, in which this recent controversy has stimulated, about how we get better eyesight on funds flow relative to the athletic departments and the main institutions prior to the night before our meetings, so that we can exercise our fiduciary obligations to try and manage policy and process before it becomes a controversy. And I know everybody is committed to doing that, and I look forward to that. And I do recognize the competitive pressures. I just think as a national model, this is an unsustainable model, and open to any good thoughts or initiatives that might exist to try and somehow, rein it in for everybody's benefit.
Thank you, Regent Duvall. All very legitimate concerns. I don't see anyone else's hand up. So I will move that the board approve the Arizona State University request for an extension of a multiple year employment contract for Raymond Anderson as the Vice President of University Athletics as described in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Mr. Chairman, we have a motion if you'd like to call for the vote.
Thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you. Item number 7, the University of Arizona asks the board to approve a new multiple year employment contract for Jed Fish as the head football coach. President Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Regents. I saw Dave just come on at the bottom of my screen. I was prepared to enthusiastically present this, but I'm going to defer to Dave, since he ran an incredible process in about 10 days, doing a extensive, exhaustive national search and settled on Jed Fish, who I'll just say parenthetically completed his PhD in coaching with 2 years with the LA Rams under Sean McVay's tutelage to get a young approach. And then his final year capstone with Bill Belichick and the Patriots before he came to Arizona. So I'll yield my time to Dave.
Well, thank you, President Robbins. I think you did a good introduction. We're very excited about our new football coach, Coach Fish, Jed Fish. Most recently was with the New England Patriots, has a wealth of experience at both the college, major college programs, and at the NFL, the National Football League. It's our, we're asking the board to approve a new 5-year contract for Coach Fish, as outlined in the executive summary. We're again looking forward to a rebirth of Arizona football. It's certainly not met our expectations over the last several years, and we are looking forward to the fresh new start of it. Coach Fish has assembled an outstanding staff and put the pieces together already in his first 40 days on the job that have been remarkable. So we're looking forward to that 5-year contract. We've outlined the base salaries and the financial components to that, and also, as we've addressed with other contracts, an incentive plan for athletic performance, team performance, academic performance as well, focused on the success of our student athletes on both levels here at the University of Arizona. So with that, Dr. Robbins, if you have any other general comments.
Oh,
Okay, thank you, Dr. Robbins and Dave. And I appreciate the work that you've done, or the additional explanation you have given the board since our committee meeting a couple weeks ago, and specifically as it relates to the performance incentives on the academic side. So I appreciate that supplemental information. Anybody? I see a hand up. Regent Ridenhour.
Thank you. I'll try to make it very short. For the first time in a long time, I suspect since Dick Tomey left the University of Arizona, we've been through any number of coaches. This coach I am truly excited about. And I think he brings an enthusiasm to the university that we've been lacking for quite some time. I think he brings a community relation, shipbuilding to Tucson. So I'm very much in favor of this, and I'm extremely excited to have him. I assume he looks somewhat like Charlton Heston in Moses. He probably has a robe and a staff, and anyway, I think we're looking forward to great things at the university.
All right, thank you, Regent Ridenhour. Any other comments before I make a motion? Seeing no hands raised, I move that the board approve the University of Arizona request for a multiple-year employment contract for Jed Fish as the head football coach, as described in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to call for the vote.
Thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does pass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This concludes the Finance, Capital, and Resources Committee agenda.
Thank you very much, Regent Taylor Robeson. The next item on our agenda, I believe, and I'm going to turn to John Arnold and to Rich Stanley in just a moment, is an issue associated with the Arizona Innovation Alliance, specifically focused on Yuma County and on a collaborative relationship with President Daniel Corr and the Arizona Western College. You'll recall that it was at our last meeting that we approved the Arizona Innovation Alliance, which is based on the University Innovation Alliance, which is national and chaired by President Crow. I have heard from colleagues around the country. They remain surprised at us. They're surprised that we can take 3 competitive universities and actually expect any kind of collaboration at all. So it's nice to return to this topic with, I think, recognition around the country by those who noticed that this is not an easy thing to pull off. And we've endeavored to do so. With that, Rich and John, I turn to you.
Thank you, Regent Penley. For some time now, we have noticed some of the educational success that is going on in Yuma. Specifically, Yuma high schools with high levels of at-risk students are significantly outperforming Arizona averages in terms of high school graduation rates, post-high school enrollment into higher education, and 6-year graduation for their high school graduates. Let me give you one specific example. San Luis High School in 2018 graduated 584 graduates. They were 100% Hispanic. They had a 91% graduation rate, high school graduation rate. 71% of their graduates enrolled in higher education, and 37% of their high school graduates completed a 2 or 4-year degree. All numbers that are significantly higher than state averages. However, the one area, Yuma area graduates, high school graduates, trail the state is in 4-year degree completion. Yuma area high school graduates complete 2-year degrees at almost triple the rate of the rest of the state, and yet they complete 4-year degrees at less than half the rate of the rest of the state. For some time, Regent Penley and myself have engaged with Yuma area leadership on some of these questions. We've met with the mayor's office and have had discussions with the Western Chancellor, Daniel Corr, who's with us today. We welcome you. And discussed how we may do a better job collaborating among the 3 universities to increase access for Yuma students to 4-year degrees. We have a number of assets in Yuma. Currently, there's about 650 Yuma students who are our students who are studying in Yuma towards a 4-year degree. We have about 40 bachelor degree programs on site in Yuma, but we believe there's an opportunity to improve the access that Yuma students have. As we've talked about this question, Regent Penley, myself, talked to the presidents and approached Rich Stanley about the Innovation Alliance taking this project on, partnering with Arizona Western, really assessing the assets that we have in Yuma and seeing if there is a way we can better utilize those assets or expand those assets to improve access for Yuma students. So really today, we just wanted to bring this issue and this project to the attention of the board. Rich, I don't know if you have any additional comments on the next steps for the Innovation Alliance, and certainly Chancellor Corr, we'd love to hear any thoughts you have.
Sure.
Rich, you're muted.
Go ahead, Rich.
Sorry. So John's summary of this is very good, and I think that this is going to be an excellent project for the Arizona Innovation Alliance. I will say that our work overall in the Innovation Alliance is just now getting started. We have great liaisons at U of A and NAU and Barry Brummond and Annika Olson. We are closing applications for the coordinator, assistant director positions when the board approved the Arizona Innovation Alliance. Those applications are closing on Monday. I understand we have a pool of about 45 people that we're going to have to wade our way through, which is a great situation to be in. In going into this project, we are going to need to work very carefully with all the folks down in Yuma. I don't carry any initial assumptions about what's the right solution. I suspect it's going to be a combination of better and more coordinated student support and advising of different program options that are available there between the 3 universities. It will probably have something to do with helping students understand their financial aid opportunities, perhaps better than they do today. And we will be turning to the provosts to talk to them about additional programs that may have some substantial demand in Yuma that we're not currently offering. I don't consider that to be specifically an Innovation Alliance job to determine program selections, but I do think that it may be a piece of how we'll get into getting better academic attainment, or better four-year degree attainment, I should say, in Yuma. So looking forward to working on it, but I'm looking forward to reporting back to the board, but I've got nothing substantive to say yet.
Thanks, Rich. Chancellor, any comments?
Thank you. I'll be brief. I'm Daniel Core, proud to be the president of Arizona Western College. And let me tell you, Yuma is a vibrant, growing place. There's a little bit of magic in the air going on down here, and there's great vitality, great enthusiasm, great passion for education and creating a college-going culture in this community. We're awfully proud to host all three universities right here on our campus. Our graduation each May is a joint graduation with all three universities and the community college. We want to see our graduates see the university graduates and aspire to the same thing. 3 years ago, we created our BHAG, our big, hairy, audacious goal of doubling baccalaureate attainment by the year 2035. When we double baccalaureate attainment, we will only be at the state average. There's a lot of work to do. And what's so audacious about that goal? We don't offer baccalaureate degrees, and despite some movement in the state, we have no interest in offering baccalaureate degrees. We want to partner better, more collaboratively, more innovatively with our university partners, because again, there's a little bit of magic going on down here. Last year, in the midst of the pandemic, Arizona Western College awarded more degrees and certificates than we ever had, transferred more of our students than we ever had in our history, and more of our graduates earned university degrees than at any point in our history. The trajectory is going our way, but again, a lot to do. We have about a 14.8% baccalaureate attainment rate in Yuma County, and I look forward to being an active partner with the Arizona Innovation Alliance and seeing how we can get our students, who are earning, again, an associate's degree at a significantly higher rate than the state, across the finish line with a baccalaureate degree to achieve our BHAG and create the thriving community that we all desire here in Yuma. So I appreciate the opportunity to chat a little bit here today, and I really look forward to partnering with Rich and his colleagues in the Arizona Innovation Alliance for the betterment of Yuma. So again, thank you, and appreciate the opportunity to chat with you today.
Thank you. Regent Penley, any comments?
Thank you very much, John. I very much appreciate the willingness of President Core to cooperate and collaborate with us. If you go back to two fundamental issues that we've been dealing with now for a long time, one of them is attainment. And we need attainment not just in Coconino County, nor in Pima County and Maricopa County. We need attainment throughout the state and a growth in post-secondary attainment. Yuma has made a real commitment to that with doubling attainment goals. I've been very impressed with that. If we're going to achieve what we need in the new economy and really have the kind of job growth in the state of Arizona, we have to be focused on the entire state. That is why we have a history with our three universities of expanding beyond their home counties to Sierra Vista, to Lake Havasu, to Prescott, and yes, to Yuma and Mojave. This matters for the long run of Arizona. It also matters that we've made a continuous commitment to work closely with Arizona's two-year colleges. Again, not just in our home counties for the three universities, but throughout the state. That's why we have ASU degree programs in conjunction with Eastern Arizona Community College. It's why we have programs for baccalaureate degrees with Yavapai County and Yavapai Community College. And it's why this proposal that we have before us to consider and talk about, not one to vote on today, since we already have an Innovation Alliance, but this allows us to take what we've already done successfully in Yuma, what Daniel Core and Arizona Western College have already done, and really accelerate that in ways that benefit another sector of Arizona. So thanks, John, for letting me make some comments about this. And thanks, Rich Stanley. Thanks, President Core. And thanks to you, John, for moving this ahead.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments on this item? Thank you.
I think you have Regent Schupman, John.
Regent Schupman.
Thank you, John. Just a quick comment. I'm a huge fan of collaboration, as you all know. What this has the potential to do is to take great work being done by all three of our institutions in Yuma and find the ways to make it more efficient and more effective in the delivery of higher education. I think it's a potential for growth for all three of our institutions as well as Arizona Western. So I'm a huge fan of the idea. Now the challenge is to figure out where we can find these efficiencies, where we can find these opportunities to do it better through a formal collaboration. So congratulations to all of you for making this happen. I'm a huge fan. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Anything else on this?
Regent Manson also has her hand up.
Trying to get myself off mute. I have not been involved in this up to this point, and so I'm very curious to see, what the results are and what the plans are. What if you are doing such, apparently, Arizona Western is doing a spectacular job of encouraging students to come to your institution and get two-year degrees. Do we have an understanding of what the barriers are to moving from a 2-year to a 4-year matriculation? Is it a lack of programs on the university side for a 2-2 program? Is it the type of 2-year programs that are offered that may not easily translate to a 4-year degree? And I may be getting ahead of the process. I'm just curious.
Thank you for that question. It may be all of that and a whole lot more. Again, our university partners have been amazing in collaborating and adding additional programs, but some of it is our students not aspiring to a baccalaureate degree, some being place bound and needing to stay in Human if their particular degree option isn't available to them. So I think there's any number of reasons, and I think that's probably, along with my university colleagues on the Arizona Innovation Alliance, we'll take a look at, right? We want to find out, why are they stopping short of that finish line? And right now we're engaged in a really dynamic grant-funded program with Northern Arizona University, the YES program that seeks to solve this exact problem. And as with most complex, nuanced problems, it's probably not one or two things. It's probably many different things, some of which the university can address, some of which the college can address, some of which maybe the community needs to address. So I hope to have a whole lot better answer for you 6 to 8 months down the road.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to seeing this.
Anything else, John, on this before we turn to another issue?
If there's no other comments, Regent Penley and our enthusiasm to talk about Yuma, we skipped item 8. So we need to go back to that item.
Yeah, the board needs to review and adopt for immediate implementation a revised ABOR policy 2-325, which is associated with the Arizona Teachers Academy. This is a result of the change in law in the state of Arizona, and a member of our general counsel staff, Samantha Blevins, is going to present this item. Samantha?
Good afternoon, Regents. We're asking you to amend the Teachers Academy policy to allow additional discretion in granting service obligation deferments. The existing policy language is very prescriptive. If a person who received a Teachers Academy scholarship wanted to defer their obligation to teach, and it was limited to we got a few requests related to COVID where they wanted to defer their requests and we weren't able to. And so the language in the policy for immediate implementation allows the board to grant a deferral in situations where the facts are beyond the applicant's control. And that way the board would have the discretion to grant deferrals in cases where beyond the beyond the control of the applicants. If you have any specific questions, I would be happy to answer any of them.
Are there any questions, members of the board? Seeing none, I move that the board adopt for immediate implementation the proposed revisions to ABOR Policy 2-325, Arizona Teachers Academy, as presented in the executive summary. Do I have a second?
Second.
I believe I have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does pass. Thank you very much, Sam, for presenting that. The next item on our agenda, unless I've missed something else, is the student regent report. Is that correct?
Regent Penley,
I'm
we
going to
do
turn
have this.
to our two student regents, Regent Rusk and Regent Dave.
Regent Penley, we do have one other item before.
Which other item have I missed?
This is the TRIF item.
Oh, I thought we were not dealing with TRIF, John.
We're postponing the one half, but we have the other half that we were going to deal with today. If we can deal with it later, if you would prefer. This is the Sun Corridor piece that.
Okay, why don't you present the Sun Corridor piece?
Thank you. Sorry about that. Sorry for the confusion, sir, around that. So in June, the governor announced $40 million to build a high-capacity broadband conduit and fiber along I-17 to Flagstaff and along I-19 from Tucson to Nogales. In conjunction, so that one piece happened in June. In December, the governor announced a $115 million grant to the universities from Federal CARES Act funds. The governor, as part of that grant, the governor asked us to become partners with the state in the broadband project. Specifically, they asked the universities to contribute an estimated $8.7 million for last mile build out, some equipment costs, and some operating costs. The universities believe that our system will significantly benefit from the completion of this broadband project. We're proposing allocating $3 million in FY 2020 TRIF monies towards that $8.7 million cost. ASU and the University of Arizona will divide the remaining cost. This expenditure is an appropriate TRIF expenditure because the expanded broadband will increase access for placebound students and will enhance IT utilization among many other benefits of our universities.
Thanks, John, for that explanation. I think all of us endorse expanding broadband. We've seen great need for that in the K through 12 system as a part of the pandemic. We knew about it before, so this needs to happen. Have we resolved issues, though, associated with where this is headed in terms of the leasing of access to this to private businesses?
Mr. Chairman, we have not. So that there is legislation that's working its way through the legislature. As I understand it, we have not formalized a contract yet with ADOT on our access to the network or the pipeline. And we certainly will not be distributing any of these dollars. And the payments would be made to ADOT directly, and we certainly won't be making any of those payments until those issues are resolved. But we'd ask for the board to allocate the funds. So once we do have those issues resolved, we can move forward with the project.
Concerns, comments, board members? Regent Manson.
A quick question. So if this were all to blow up and not be feasible, the fact that we have allocated money does not restrict us from going back and reallocating it correctly?
Mr. Chairman, Regent Manson, no.
Okay.
The board could reallocate those dollars at a future date.
Okay, thank you.
Regent Taylor Robeson.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Are we being asked to do this today before we have these other questions answered?
Regent Penley, Regent Taylor Robeson, yes, the governor's office asked us to commit to the $8.7 million prior to their disbursement of the $115 million. We had to submit an expenditure plan back in December. And in fact, ADOT has already sent us a first billing around these dollars, which we're going to hold on to until we can resolve these other issues.
Thank you, John. Does that satisfy your concerns, Regent Taylor Robeson?
I don't think so. I mean, should our agreement, or could our agreement be conditioned on some of these other questions being answered?
Strikes me that it needs to be contingent on that, but Regent Shupman?
I think what's bothering us at this point is a lack of knowledge of exactly how each university benefits, exactly how the state benefits, what our role is in this. I understand Sun Corridor being a nonprofit affiliated agency with all three of our universities. They have a history of good work. But I'm curious if our presidents have a clear understanding of how this will benefit us as an enterprise, and how supportive are each of them in making sure we move forward on this.
President Crow.
Yes, Regent Schutman's comment and question. Obviously, the world will be a better place if we have high-speed internet to every home, much less every university. And this is a last mile. This in my view, this is basically a correction. It's an expensive, not a correction. It's a last mile addition just to finish the thing off, and it's a little bit complicated. But as Director Arnold suggested, it's a way in which the governor is working with the universities to try to get this project done. So we're excited about what we can get done when this is all finished, and we have the kind of connectivity to link up learning assets and research assets and so forth. So this is a positive step. A kind of unusual funding mechanism, but nonetheless, it's a last mile thing that has to be fixed. So,
thank you very much, President Crow. Other comments from either President Chang or President Robbins?
Yeah, we're supportive, as President Crow said. I think it will drive immense benefit for our students and our faculty and staff. So we're supportive of this.
Thanks very much, President Robbins. I don't think this still resolves the unknowns associated with this, at least to my satisfaction, John. So I'm trying to think how we deal with those unknowns at this particular stage.
Regent Penley, we can table this item and bring it back at a future date, and once we resolve some of the contract concerns around it.
I think that would be better to, I mean, yes, do we favor expanding broadband in exactly the way that President Crow described it a moment ago? Yes. I'm sure we would unanimously endorse that. But I think we need to be clear about what our responsibilities are going to be, what the maintenance costs are going to be to this, and the extent to which we're involved in setting up a business that would use this nonprofit entity to lease to cable providers and others. So I think there's a lot of clarity here that we don't have at this point. So I think, John, I think saving this, and if necessary at a special meeting, we can address this if we need to do so to meet some needs of the legislature and the governor.
Okay.
Is that all right?
It's fine with me. Looking forward to another special meeting. I always enjoy getting extra time.
Regent Ridenour always claps his hands whenever he sees me say something like that. He'll learn to do it digitally soon, I can tell. So with that, I'm going to turn to the student regent report. Regent Rusk and Regent Dave.
Thank you, Chairman Penley. Hello, board. Good afternoon. Hope everyone is doing well. We do have a singular slide to share. However, I think it'd be a little bit better and more personal if you could see both Nikhil and I could see all of your wonderful faces today. So So Nikhil and I actually don't have too much to report on today, not because we're not working. In fact, I think Nikhil and I probably talk together too much. We have too much to report on, but we're waiting until the next board meeting to talk about a lot of those items. Today, we're going to give you a short update on the list of items that we're working on today, and then tell you what you can expect in the next board meeting. So I will take care of the basic needs report. Nikhil, if you'd like to talk a little bit about what we're doing with legislation and how we're starting to get sort of involved with lobbying.
Absolutely. So to touch on the legislative side first, myself and Anthony are actively working to continue forming relationships within the legislature and continuing to advocate for students and funding for students, both within the 3 public university system and for students in Arizona at large. Beyond that, we are working with our respective student governments and our student leaders across all 3 universities to really try and garner support for a lot of these legislative asks, as well as try and understand the students' perspectives around these things and work to empower those perspectives. And again, like Regent Rusk said, we will continue to provide updates with more details following some more work that we'll do in the next month during our next student region report. Thank you, Chairman Penley. Thank you, members of the board. Anthony, if you want to continue.
Yeah, so to kind of add to that, Nikhil and I are particularly excited by the New Economy Initiative, as well as the Arizona Promise Program, which will encourage students from all backgrounds, regardless of their access to resources or their finances or their family socioeconomic goals, to realize that education is a possibility. And so both Regent Dave and myself find it pertinent that the student face is a part of legislation. It's easier to make these legislative asks when they can see the students that it's affecting. So Nikhil and I are extremely excited to begin this process and extremely excited to speak for the 180,000 students in the Arizona system. Obviously, the New Economy Initiative is massively important for the state, as well as massively important for the students that it's affecting. So we're very, very excited to continue that work throughout this month and very excited to report the progress we'll be making in about a month. The second item that we wanted to discuss today is the work that we've been doing with the Food and Housing Insecurity Working Group. So next month, you'll be hearing, or actually in April, you'll be hearing a full report on everything that Nikhil and I have been working on now for the past 6 months, and items that Lauren and I have been working on for the past, or no longer Lauren, but myself for the past year and some days. A part of that work is creating and formulating a survey that will be sent out to all of the students throughout the state of Arizona. We're still waiting on a lot of those details, but we can tell you that we already have a draft of the survey prepared. We're looking at how we can best disseminate this throughout the 3 universities, so we can better understand what's going on underneath the hood at our universities and best understand how, through the formulation of the New Economy Initiative, the Arizona Promise Program, and now looking at how we can best support students who are coming from lower socioeconomic groups to be able to have a flourishing career at the university. So we're looking at food and housing insecurity, as we've mentioned before. We know at other universities that there's about a 33% likelihood that students are facing food insecurity. And so fully surveying and understanding our student body and their needs will be absolutely pertinent to understanding what we can best do to help those students. None of this work would be possible without the working group members. So I want to publicly thank everyone for being a part of that, who is a part of it. I want to thank the working group at the University of Arizona for all of the countless hours, particularly Lucas, the research head at the University of Arizona, who has been remarkably useful in drafting the survey, ensuring that it's possible to be used throughout the universities. And again, within the next 2 months, you can expect a full report from us to explain everything that we've been doing and some of the recommendations that we think will be remarkably useful for the students. With that being said, again, I don't know if Nikhil, if you had anything else to add there, but again, not in the lack of work on our end, but rather waiting until the right time so that you can all see a full picture of what's happening at the universities, a full picture of what the student regents are doing, and a full picture of what's capable for the coming years. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Regent Rusk. Thank you, Regent Dave, not only for the report, but for the brevity of it. It's appreciated as well. With that, I'm going to turn to the Faculty Council's report and Professor Summers. Professor Summers.
Thank you very much, Chair Penley. I'm not sure I can be as brief, but I'll try my best. Thank you. All right. Chair Penley, Regents, Presidents, and ABOR staff. Representatives from the University Senate leadership from each of the universities met for 2 hours yesterday and 2 hours today to discuss several issues of shared concern among our respective faculties at Arizona's public universities. We held our Arizona Faculties Council meeting via Zoom, and we're joined by Dr. Helen Baxendale and Dr. Mark Denke from the ABOR office. And we are grateful for the valuable insights and information they brought to our conversations yesterday and this morning. We're also thankful to University of Arizona Faculty Center staff members, Jane Cherry and Andrew Schroeder, for hosting the Zoom meeting and taking notes. First, we would like to thank our respective county and state of Arizona health departments for working closely with all 3 universities on efficiently and effectively rolling out a vaccine program that includes faculty in the 1B phase of distribution. Arizona State University operates 2 largest sites for vaccine distribution in Maricopa County, and faculty are now receiving appointments for their first and second shots. Northern Arizona University has vaccinated more than 2,900 campus employees and takes pride in its role serving the public good and helping to alleviate the burden on the county. The University of Arizona has just become a high-capacity state COVID-19 vaccination site serving Pima County and Southern Arizona, thus moving from distributing 800 vaccinations per day to up to 6,000 per day in the near future. While there are varied mechanisms for access and a long list of faculty who are still waiting to receive their first vaccination, we are very encouraged by the role our universities are playing to promote public health and serve the greater Arizona community. Faculty are very much looking forward to serving students on campus in our full capacity as teachers, mentors, and advisors this fall. The more Arizonans vaccinated, the more we will be able to serve Arizona students. In reference to today's board agenda, Arizona Faculty's council members are very encouraged by the work of the board and board staff to generate a revised policy regarding academic locations, programs, and organizational units, as well as the revision of general education. The revised policy allows for the application and review of new programs that require physical space designed to serve Arizona students on a non-temporary basis. Therefore, programs offered solely online and programs that are part of a limited enrollment partnership are excluded from this policy. The AFC has been made aware that this revision is agnostic to how institutions define online or immersion programs, and it is ultimately left to the university to decide the target population and whether the course is offered online. Therefore, we would ask the board to consider addressing possible loopholes in this or in a separate policy for new programs that do not fall into any of these categories, or for new programs that are designed as online. The AFC urges us to continue following established policies and procedures for reviewing and approving curriculum. We appreciate that the policy still allows each university to be competitive in a national and global market with online education, but the in-state market shares of education in online and immersive spaces are much less clear with regard to asynchronous and remote synchronous offerings, particularly if faculty are being asked to compete with their colleagues when offering similar programs to the same students. We also appreciate the board working with the provosts and general education directors at our respective institutions and are looking forward to applying these guidelines in the most rigorous way possible. This will require diligence and patience as we engage our shared governance entities and faculty stakeholders across campus in order to ensure faculty buy-in and support going forward. Faculty governance can be a nuanced process, but a necessary one in ensuring the responsible approval and implementation of these guidelines. We are conscious that faculty worked beyond the provisions of their contracts to meet the extraordinary educational challenges, including the extra support students required as wrought by the pandemic. It has taken a human, domestic, and professional toll on faculty as evidenced by research, particularly for women and caregivers. Because shared governance processes take time, general education implementation will require thoughtful scheduling. This comes on top of the flexibility required to nimbly respond to ongoing issues related to the COVID crisis. Faculty continue to rise to the challenges and demonstrate resilience and creativity in their commitment to student outcomes in their attainment of a high-quality education in Arizona. For this reason, we appreciate the amendment made to the Arizona Teachers Academy policy that accommodates students who are unable to find immediate employment as teachers in K-12 public schools. The AFC would like to support and thank the regions for their efforts and understanding of the complications related to hiring educators at present. I have seen a renaissance of sorts in my own College of Education at the University of Arizona, with a renewed interest in the teaching profession among young adults in Tucson and Southern Arizona. Anecdotally, I believe Teachers Academy program is primarily responsible for educators' increased desire to stay and teach our children in Arizona communities. Additional areas of discussion included an interest in investigating issues related to workload, particularly for faculty assigned with high teaching loads. For example, it is not clear why faculty in some colleges have a comparable distribution of annual workload relative to their peers at the same university. For example, 4 large classes of 50 undergraduate students in a College of Humanities is equivocal to 2 small undergraduate seminars in College of Science. Similarly, the largest courses with the highest demand are often general education courses, such as introductory writing courses that are taught by non-tenure track faculty, some with as many as 10 classes per year. Instructors of large courses that require a focus on writing require a tremendous amount of work in addition to classroom instruction, such as grading assignments, meeting with students, and responding to emails. Her timeliness of grading and quality of response is what helps develop that crucial relationship between faculty and students that retains students and assures that they attain their degree. Compounding this issue is salary compression and longstanding inequities within and between colleges, which often leads to some of our best teaching faculty seeking alternative employment outside of the University of Arizona system. Members of the Arizona Faculty's Council have agreed to research these issues at their respective institutions in partnership with administration who can assist with data access and analysis so that a clearer picture of workload inequities and proposed solutions can be presented to the Board of Regents at a later date. Finally, Arizona Faculty's Council wants to thank the regents who took a stand against legislative bills in this session that would prevent the requirement of COVID vaccine by employers, restrict the ability for healthcare professionals at our institutions to provide full reproductive health information to our students, and limit the conduct of beneficial research experiments designed to improve healthcare. The AFC would also like to applaud the student regents for their engagement in and commitment to basic needs of Arizona students through the Food Insecurity and Housing Work Group. We look forward to learning more from your report at the upcoming board meeting. This concludes my report from the Arizona Faculty's Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Summers. As a reminder to the board, staff are working with several individuals at this point on online metrics. We all know that online classes are becoming more common, even in a non-pandemic world. So this is just part and parcel of the way that we'll deliver education in the future, but we do need specific metrics down the roads, and we will be getting to that as a board. Just a reminder to the board as well, this board delegates workload issues to the 3 presidents, and it does so because of the complications associated with individual faculty who perform differential levels of contributions in various areas, and because as well, there are differential markets for different professionals within the faculty. We'll continue, unless there's a change at this board, to delegate that sort of responsibility to our 3 presidents. Are there any issues regents wish to raise before we go into recess? If not, we'll begin at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Right, John?
That is correct, sir.
And we hope you have a good evening. And for those of you who can, I believe President Crow, the Regents Professors Award Ceremony begins at 5, correct?
That's correct. And this one will be the flashiest, most exciting presentation of Regents Professors and all of their achievements. And for those of you that think you can wander off to do something at home, this will be the greatest thing that you've seen in many, many years.
Now, in fairness, I'm going to have to give President Chang and President Roberts a chance to advertise their own programs in the future. You know that, of course. Anyway, many thanks to all of you. Thanks again, John, to you and your staff for making all this possible, and for all of you on the 3 campuses who join us in making really a successful effort for the state of Arizona and for the benefit of Arizona from our higher education that we deliver through these 3 universities. Thanks,